This is a video about not really being good enough to do something, but then seeing how much better you can make your bike to allow you to hopefully achieve your goal, which in this case is riding really fast up a hill. Making my bike lighter though isn't gonna cut it, but fortunately CeramicSpeed had just got in touch to offer their range of products to try, and I thought, aha, I can see a plan coming together.
We've all got a climb that's important to us, haven't we? I mean, it might not be a big deal to anyone else, but we can't all live at the bottom of Alpe d'Huez. But that doesn't matter, because any climb can be important. It might be the one you do regularly, the one that tells you how fit you are, or the one where you know your best time up it. Now this one here, this is mine. One or two of you might recognise it, but probably not many of you. It's called a Belmont Hill, and it's just outside my hometown of Bristol in the southwest of England. It is, wait for it, 1.44 kilometres long, an average gradient of 7%. And yes, I appreciate that that doesn't sound like much. I did say it wasn't important, and yes, it probably barely registers as even a climb for many of you. But a few years back now, I was actually the fastest rider up here with a time of 3 minutes and 19 seconds. Not anymore though. The record is now just 3 minutes and 7 seconds. And I think there's probably a big question mark over whether I've ever been capable of doing that. But to make matters worse, I think I'm now at that age where instead of getting better every year, I'm not. And I don't think it's all age related necessarily. I also have less time to train as well. The problem for me though is that I've still got competitive juices flowing through my veins, and so I quite fancy at least setting a personal best up here, if not having a shot at the record. So the question is then, how am I going to do it?
I'm going to call in some favours and try to turn back time, that's how. First up though, let's be clear, there is going to be no cheating, nor am I going to allocate more time to train for this, nor sacrifice the rides that I do to prepare for a 3 minute long climb. I'm not even going to try and lose weight, even though theoretically dropping a kilo could save me 2 precious seconds.
Instead, I'm going to do what many like-minded people do and look to my bike for the answers. This is the steed that's hopefully going to propel me towards my goal. It did last time, to be fair to it. It's my trusty Canyon Aero, now getting on for 3 years old, would you believe, but still trucking along as sweetly as ever with its Zip 454 wheels, SRAM Ready Tap group set, Quark power meter. It weighs just a shade over 7.2 kilos, and so you could quite reasonably ask the question, how on earth do you make a superbike even better?
My first port of call is to Jason Smith, who's the Chief Technology Officer at CeramicSpeed. He's also the inventor of their radical driven drive shaft bike, which, to be fair, I did ask to see if it was ready, but alas, it's not. But nevertheless, I've heard that there are apparently 16 to 20 watts up for grabs by optimizing the drivetrain that I've already got. So, Jason, how realistic is that figure of, excuse me, just choking on my breakfast. Jason, how realistic is that figure of 16 to 20 watts?
It's relatively realistic, especially at the power output that you're going to be putting out for this climb. I believe you're putting out about 400, 450 watts. So with an optimized drivetrain, at that wattage, you'll probably be able to save about 16 watts, give or take, if you optimize your drivetrain.
Okay, so I'm actually going to be, I'm aiming for 530. Does that mean I get more savings?
Yes, so you're pushing 530. A lot of the drivetrain optimization practices, techniques that I'll tell you about, a lot of them are fairly linear with rider output. So yeah, your power output, you're probably going to be pushing the high teens, close to 20 watts savings, yes.
Following on from my conversation with Jason, then here is how I'm going to get my 20 extra watts. So first of all, the chain is the big one. Now, a clean chain is more efficient, an optimally lubricated chain is more efficient still, but to go the whole hog and get all the watts, I've done this. I've swapped it to a CeramicSpeed UFO chain. So they don't actually make the chain itself. They buy a top of the range one, then they strip it right back to bare metal, polish it up to make it even more efficient, and then they add their own special coating. Now I kind of want to say lubricant, but it's not exactly lubricant like you or I would know it, and it's finished off with rather attractive Teflon dust. So apparently that is worth 10 watts. Oh yeah, 10 watts. Then next on the list is this, which is the OSPW. You can see that I've replaced the derailleur cage there for this extra long one, and that is to make space for these 17 tooth pulley wheels there. The theory being that the less a chain has to bend, the less friction it will generate. You can see there's a larger radius there, meaning that the chain is literally bending less. So that apparently is worth about 4 watts, would you believe? The reason it's less than the chain is because it doesn't really deal with the same kind of load. All the load on the chain is at the top there. So all the load on the bottom here comes from the derailleur cage spring, which I have further tuned. Oh yeah, because around the back, there are actually 3 holes, 3 settings, high tension, medium or low. I've got on the lowest one, which is apparently the most efficient. Not ideal if you're gonna ride Paris-Roubaix, perfect if you're doing a time trial on good roads or a hill climb on reasonably good roads. So that's 14 watts right there. I've also swapped out my bottom bracket. I've now got a CeramicSpeed bottom bracket in there. That's apparently 2 to 3 extra watts. And even the wheel bearings have got that treatment. Because I'm going uphill, I'm going a little bit slower, they're not going to be saving me quite as much as if I was doing a time trial. But nevertheless, you add that all up and that is 20 watts. But brilliantly, I'm not finished there. It's going to get even more geeky because we're going to talk about gear ratios. And yes, when I first heard about Jason's work here in this area, I was completely blown away. And I think it's quite fascinating. And what then about my gear ratios then? So this is something that I can effectively influence without necessarily changing anything on the bike. The decision to go for big ring versus little ring, or what gears, what sprocket I'm using on the cassette at the back. So when you found out the info about the climb, my power output, my preferred cadence, you've done some quick maths, is that right? To sort of work out what I should be running?
Okay, what do we know about drivetrain friction and ring sizes and cross chaining? We know that a bigger ring is better, efficiency wise. Yeah. And we also know that cross chaining is bad because that just drains energy. Yeah. So how can we, essentially, here's the question, how can we use the biggest ring possible and minimal cross chaining? So we look at your stock setup. Let's say you ran a 5321. Well, you're going to have a lot of cross chaining because with a typical cassette, that 21 tooth cog is going to be in the 9th position. Yeah. So there's a lot of cross chaining. Well, then let's go back and say, hey, this is a climb, Simon, so why don't you run the little ring? That's for climbing. Well, in this case, you'd be in a 3915. So you'd have a lot of cross chaining on the other side of the cassette, plus you're running the 39, which is a smaller ring, so that's kind of a double negative. So you want to throw that out.
In essence, your gear selection could have an impact of about 5 watts on your efficiency. So the theory goes that, as with our oversized pulley wheels, bigger is better. So your big chainring should be more efficient than your little chainring. However, cross chaining, where the chain is at an angle, is even more costly than that. So in this case, my problem is, how do I go up my climb in the big chainring, but in a big enough sprocket at the back, but still without cross chaining? So Jason suggested, firstly, I could run a 1x chainring because those are set slightly further inboard to improve the chain line at the back. Or I could create, in his words, a Frankencrank by swapping the big ring and the inner ring, and therefore having my big ring on the inner ring position, but I wasn't willing to do that because, well, it just seems all kinds of wrong. So instead, what we're doing is looking at the cassette. So with Jason's calculations, he's worked out that if I use a 53 tooth chainring, I'm going to be needing about a 21 tooth sprocket at the back. That's looking at my speed that I'm going to do and my preferred cadence, which last time was an average of 86. Now I can't run a single speed because I am going to need to change gear on here. So what I've done is I've bought a cheap cassette where I'm able to swap the positions of the sprockets around. And as you can see, I've moved all the gears that I want to use for my climb right down to the outside of the cassette and then stuck all the other sprockets on the inside where I'm not going to use them. So I've effectively got a 5-speed bike going from 18, 19, 21, 23, 25. Although if I'm in the 23 or the 25, I might as well give up because I'm not going to be breaking any records. But with this setup now, that is an additional 5 watts saved. Winner! Look at that. Particularly pleased, not only with the super fast chain, but also the fact that it looks like something a hipster might put on their fixed gear bike. And it kind of pops against my otherwise murdered out bike. Anyway, looks are not the primary consideration here. One thing we haven't touched on, which are a big consideration, is aerodynamics. Now, I'm not really much of a weight weenie, but I know that even if riding up a hill at 28 kilometers an hour, aerodynamics are going to play a part. So I have enlisted the help of another friend, another very useful friend called David Morse, who is an advanced development engineer at Zip. Now, he's super stacked with work, but he very kindly did some rough calculations for me, following on from some information that he'd asked for and that I duly sent over. So my weight, ready to ride with helmet and shoes on, my bike weight, and then also some close-up pictures of the road surface. Now, he then went on to suggest that were I able to do the same effort as last time, 524 watts, on a time trial bike, in a time trial position, I would go 7 seconds faster. Now, unfortunately, I can't, nor could I do as he suggested after that, which was put the same power out in the saddle, in the drops, but it just goes to show how important aerodynamics are, even uphill. And that includes the wheels, because I asked for advice on those. He recommended not Zip's lightest, the 202s, nor the Goldilocks Do-It-All wheel, the 454 that was on here before, but a full bifter Zip 808. Super deep, super aero. And not only that, he also suggested that I swap the 25mm wide tyres on for 23s. So I went and found some GP 4002 23mm tyres in a cupboard, dusted them off because they've not been used for a couple of years, and hey presto, here we go, pumped up to his recommendation of 85 PSI. So for a hill climb bike, I'm going for 80mm deep wheels. Oh, and he also said, take off my bottle cage. A true weight weenie would probably leave these off, but they're going back on. So here we are then, one ultimate bike and one insignificant little climb that at the same time, actually right now, feels like quite a big deal. There is a bit of pressure on, I'm not gonna lie, and there's nowhere left to hide. Other than I'd probably better mention, as you can see, the weather is far from ideal. There's like a southwesterly breeze as opposed to a southerly, and the air pressure's quite high. Also, I mean, I didn't sleep terribly well last night. I did have a massive curry for dinner, so yeah. Now, I have one confession to make. I have actually done a specific training session for that. I know I said I wouldn't, but I did one. I split the climb into halves, and I did each half at over record pace. My theory being that if I get used to riding at a certain pace up there, it will normalise it, and that'll mean, therefore, that when it comes to the record itself, I'll be expecting to do that speed and it won't feel like a big deal. So anyway, we'll see whether that theory comes to pass. One final thing to mention is that I've been umming and ahhing about whether to do a live track on my Wahoo, because you see, I've got the kind of personality type that means that if I can see that I'm ahead, I will go even faster still. Whereas if I dip behind, then I'm completely done for. So I better start fast then, because I'm going to live track it and get a massive run up. Hey, come on, stop with the beeps. I'm not ready yet. I told you I'm getting a massive run up.
it's a bit like drowning, isn't it? You can't get oxygen in, so it's almost like you give up, and then your legs and your arms still flapping around. I might spin my legs before we check the results. Personal record. Oh no! 2 seconds off! Ah! I'm not doing it again. No way. No way. 2 seconds off. Ah! Well, the good news is I've absolutely smashed my personal best by 10 seconds, which I'm delighted about, to be quite frank. The bad news is that I have missed out on the record by just 2 seconds, which is gutting. I mean, there was literally nothing else I could give, so that is me, but still, 2 seconds. Ah! Anyway, there we go. I've got to say, although doing that kind of effort is not enjoyable in the slightest, I don't think, the first half was absolutely fantastic. Before the effort had really started to bite, I mean, I felt like I was absolutely flying. It was remarkable.
Right. I am back at base, marginally recovered, but also quite surprised at just how tired I am after 3 minutes of riding. Anyway, I have crunched through some of the data that I have at my disposal. Turns out that maybe I didn't pace it quite as well as I could have done. I was 2 seconds up at the halfway point, and then I lost 4 seconds on that second half, which might explain partly why it hurt quite as much as it did, and it might also explain why I was putting out 80 watts less for that second half of the run. Anyway, there we go. Something to work on for next time, if there is a next time. One other thing, actually, I signed up for a fantastically geeky app called mywindsock.com. Oh yes, there is such a thing. And it confidently told me that actually the air was quite dense today. The ultimate excuse. It was 1.262 kilograms per meters cubed, apparently. Although I can't say that the wind was necessarily a factor. If it was blowing at all, it was a crosstail. So there we go. What I can say, confidently though, is I cannot wait to change this cassette around again. There is something criminal about having a bike this fast limited to an 18-tooth sprocket. So hopefully I can hang on to all the new bits and pieces on here and then actually ride around fast on the flat for a bit. Thinking of that, actually, I've got to say a big thank you to CeramicSpeed for the loan of all this amazing kit, and also Jason for his time in explaining all these optimizations to us, and David as well from Zip. I don't think I could have done it without them. I've got to say though, just how much I have enjoyed looking into the minutiae of the tech. I appreciate it's massively geeky, but it's been brilliant. And if the climb didn't hurt quite as much as it does, then I could see it developing into something of an obsession. Maybe if I chose a longer climb, that would be better. Or a flat time trial. I don't know, we'll see. Watch this space. In the meantime, please give this video a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. And if you would like to see an uninterrupted view of this bike next to me, then we have a closer look at it over on the tech channel, and you can get through to it by clicking on screen now.